So finally, without further ado, it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Distinguished Professor of Practice and Founding Director of the NYU Stern Center for Sustainable Business, Tensie Whelan. After 15 years leading the Rainforest Alliance, where she transformed the organization through engaging businesses with sustainability, Tensie came to Stern in 2016 to found CSB. Just 8 years later, it is the largest research center at Stern. Sustainable business and innovation is a top 10 specialization for our MBA students, and we are just getting started. Tensie's vision, her passion, her perspective are all invaluable to our collective goals of engaging business to help solve societal problems at speed and scale. So please join me in welcoming Tensie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abigail. And Alan, thank you so much for that call to action to kick us off all today. We are indeed here, as Alan said, in a very challenging time for all of us. And for those of us who've been like me, so just, look at this gray hair, right? Have been working on this for decades. It always feels like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and we just don't have the time to mess around anymore. We need to move forward consistently. So I do believe that as we look at what the challenges are today, a huge part is to demonstrate to everybody that sustainability embedded in business strategy is just good business. It drives better performance for society, but better performance for the company as well. And any company that today, for example, is looking at AI transformation across its company should also be thinking and continuing to focus on sustainability transformation across its company. So our theme, unlocking enterprise value through embedded sustainability, and you'll hear throughout the day all kinds of very concrete work that companies are doing to really bring that to life. For those of you not familiar with the center, our focus is on unleashing the business value of sustainability, the transformative potential of business, and to solve societal challenges at speed and scale. And let me just say, I work with business because business is the entity that has the most impact for evil, sorry guys, and for good across the world, right? And it's that for good part that gets me up in the morning, and I know gets all of you up in the morning. We work in education, research, and business, and today I'm going to talk a bit about our latest research. We're going to talk a bit about an update on research that I've done around ESG expertise on the boards. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into our consumer research, which you'll hear more about afterwards. A little sneak peek into our return on sustainability investment due in decarbonization, the work we're doing with private equity and the return on sustainability investment, also food finance initiatives and decarbonization, and some additional tools and ideas that we want to run by you. So to talk first, and again, I apologize, I'm a New Yorker, so always I talk fast, like Alan. So as we look at Fortune 100, or look at board members in general, right? These issues for the most material issues for different industries are existential to their future. If you're in agriculture and are not paying attention to climate change and water scarcity and labor challenges, you are not going to be in business. You are going to have a whole series of negative impacts. Board members of a company that is involved in agriculture need to understand the questions to be asking their executive leadership. Also, increasingly, we're seeing boards are being held accountable for what the company is doing in terms of greenwashing, but also actually not moving forward on issues that are material from a financial perspective for the board, for the organization. So boards need ESG training and background to ask the right questions. They don't need to be scientists, but they need to understand what these topics are so they can contribute and make sure that their company is on the right way. And honestly, they need committees to do that. So let's see where things are. So I first looked at this for the Fortune 100, so I like Fortune, back in 2018. And so at that time, 29% of 1,188 Fortune 100 board members, had relevant ESG credentials. 21%, the biggest number, had S credentials, and we saw 6% each for environment and governance. I was actually personally, I was expecting the E. I was shocked at the G, right? Today, 43% of 1,161 board members on the Fortune 100 companies have relevant ESG credentials. So significant growth. And when you look at it, much better balanced. 13% E, 15% G, 21% S. Also, 2018, only 22 boards had ESG committees. Today, it's 89. So almost all, and everybody, if you're investors, should be looking at those corporate boards that do not have ESG committees. And then also, just for me as a woman, fascinating, 2018, 24% of men had ESG credentials, 36% in 2023. 2018, 40% of women had ESG credentials. In 2023, it's 56%. And actually, as the boards have diversified, right, female board members were 25% of the total in 2018. They're 34% now. That has also helped boost the ESG credentials of the boards. So just to give you a little bit of highlight here, and here I'm going to numbers of board members rather than percentages. The DEI credentials, again, despite this backlash, was always the biggest area and has continued to grow. So from 60 to 108. We also saw on the G side, accounting oversight, which again, I was shocked how little kind of executive level oversight or accounting experience there was. 31 to 71. Cybersecurity, I was, again, shocked that only 8 board members had cybersecurity credentials. It's now up to 50, right? So you can see that this has been a priority. And on the E, sustainable business broadly, 10 to 49, renewable energy, 14 to 43, climate, again, back in 2018, there was 3, right? You're talking about companies like agricultural companies, property and casualty companies, energy companies, where 3 people. 22, I think, is still abysmal, but at least it's improved. And then water, which is critical for manufacturing, for agriculture, for so many things, only 2 board members with those types of backgrounds. This is an eye chart, just so people have it. It goes through all this in more detail. When we look at the sectors, who has the highest representation? The materials sectors, the telecommunications, consumers. The lowest are utilities, not good. Communication services, financials, not good, particularly insurance, not good. And consumer discretionary, consumer durables and apparel, also not good. The other thing that I want to say is, do the boards have the right ESG credentials? Because that, big number obscures like what's actually happening at the corporate level. So looking at the energy sector, which has 124 board members overall, 37 had E credentials, only 1 had expertise in climate, and only 1 had expertise in ESG investing. And investors are really focused on this issue in the utilities, and energy, excuse me. 18 board members have S credentials, nobody with experience in workplace safety. And in the energy sector, that's a big issue, right? 9 board members have G credentials. Also interesting, only 2 in cybersecurity, and energy is a very big, is a focus of these guys. So, and only 1 in ethics. Not saying anything. Okay, so next. 2 low-credentialed companies and their ESG exposure. So these are 2 of the lowest, right, in terms of you look at their board. Enterprise Products and Midstream Energy Services, only 1 ESG credentialed board member. They talk about energy addition versus energy transition. No evidence of any kind of planning or focus on that transition. StoneX Group, financial services firm. It has commodities, agriculture, metals, fertilizer, carbon. Everything that they sell has significant environmental and social impacts, right? 1 ESG credentialed board member who has experience in employee relations. Okay, good, glad for that. Nothing to do with their core business. And in fact, back in the day, this was quite a few years ago, they had huge problems with their energy trading account and sold it at a major loss. So does this matter? So McKesson, if you all remember, subject of many lawsuits due to the opioid crisis and their lack of integrity in terms of how they went about selling the drugs. When you looked back, right, this was happening before 2018, when you look back at their ESG credentials, nobody with ESG credentials on the board, no ESG committee. 2023, they have an ESG committee. They now have actually a really well-balanced board with a whole significant different types of credentials. 2 with E credentials and renewable energy, which is actually important in this sector. 3 with S, healthcare advocacy, civil rights, workplace diversity, and 3 with G around cybersecurity, accounting, and corporate law. So is it perfect? I can't tell you that. Is it much improved? Is this a response to what happened? Fascinating. And then another example, looking at insurance. I sort of call them out for not having a lot of presence here. So we look at Liberty Mutual. Financially material climate risk for this sector is huge and growing. In 2018, no board members with climate credentials, though 2 were affiliated with energy companies, no ESG committee. Today, 3 board members with climate, low carbon transition, renewable energy, social and sustainable business, healthcare, nobody with governance, which that stood out to me, and now has an ESG committee. So just showing you that this evolution is actually happening, right? And overall, as we think about boards, and all of you work with your boards, board credentials and training must include the material issues that are confronting that company. I believe that a sustainability ESG committee is a must, and I also believe that all the other committees need to include the relevant ESG topics. Management needs to understand and engage the board in these topics from a strategic perspective so that the board understands the upsides and the downsides, and that we want to encourage them to think about how they embed sustainability to drive better business. So that's a bit. This is a soft launch of this. We haven't put out the report yet, so you guys are the first to know all about this. So yay. All right, moving on. So what we're looking at, what I'm going to talk a bit now, is the great work of our team member, Randy Kronthal-Sacco, and her work with Circana, which provides to us pro bono data of everything that we purchase in the United States in CPG, in consumer packaged goods. And I'm not going to steal her show because she's going to talk with Richard Edelman about the research, the most updated, but I'm just going to give you a quick look as to what we knew in 2022, and then she's going to tell you where it went. But we've seen the purchasing of sustainable products in the United States continue to grow even through COVID, inflation, et cetera. It's still under 20%, so still relatively niche. But that growth is happening alongside really significant premiums, even during the pandemic and inflation. We're looking at a 28% premium for those products. Again, you'll hear a lot more about this from Randy. I thought I would do a little bit of a deep dive into the work that she did last year around green chemistry, because we haven't shown this publicly before. So here, quite fascinating. Green chemistry, clean beauty, cleaning products that don't have toxic ingredients in it. 28% of the market share in 22, up from 14% in 2019. So this has been a huge growth in this sector. Floor cleaner, personal care categories, significant inroads. All categories are growing their shares, and so really fascinating to see this. Pavement de-icing, who knew? But there's a business there. And so finally, we see that what's happening here is that a lot of the legacy or conventional products are converting to green chemistry to the tune of about $3.4 billion of market value. And remember, these are products that are being sold, okay? This is not just what they're putting out there. So the sales of them are growing significantly. And we see that consumers of all demographics are purchasing green chemistry products. And another thing you'll hear from Randy later in the work that we've done with Richard Edelman and the Edelman Company is that there are a series of messages that drive purchase across all demographics, red state, blue state, et cetera, right? So we'll hear more about that. Some of you are familiar with our return on sustainability investment work. Really excited to give you a quick update here, and you'll hear more about it in our panels later with Chisara and Elise. We have a great partnership as well, I would like to stress, with Invest Industrial, with PwC, with Deloitte, and others who are working with us in this project, and Commonwealth Fund, who funded some of the healthcare work. The ROSI framework, for those of you who are not familiar, basically identifies 9 mediating factors that drive better financial performance when you embed sustainability core to business strategy. Everything from improved risk management to operational efficiency to innovation and growth to employee retention. The point here is that any kind of good management can drive any of those things. But it is by embedding sustainability that we see you can often drive 3 or 4 of those. So again, I go back to my first statement. Managing for sustainability is good management, period. Results in better performance. from that rosy sort of set of 9 mediating factors, the way that we work with companies and sectors is to then define with the sector using SASB or other criteria, what are the material ESG issues, then what are the key strategies and practices put in place. At the practice level, we then assess what benefits come. Is it driving innovation? Is it driving operational efficiency? Is it driving employee engagement and retention? And then we figure out a unit of measurement and we monetize it. Because what we see over and over again is that even companies with robust sustainability programs are not tracking the return on sustainability investment. I also want to just thank here someone who I've been working with from the beginning on this topic, which is John Platko, formerly with ALO Advisors, now with SWCA, who's really a great partner in this work. And here are some of our, all of our different partners, corporates and others who've been engaging with us. So just a quick summary of the healthcare decarbonization research. So in this country, healthcare is responsible for 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. Globally, it's around 4%. Of course, like in the US, we like to do everything bigger, but not better, whatever. So we've got enormous amount of emissions associated with our healthcare system. Just as a small insight, the type of anesthesia you get, some anesthesias are low in carbon emissions, some are super high. Do you think the anesthesiologist is thinking about the carbon emissions of his or her choices? Absolutely not. But that's where like a huge opportunity can be found. So we've developed a strategy map and monetization framework to really, and working with the National Association of Medicine, Commonwealth Fund, and a whole series of other partners to understand how decarbonization in the healthcare sector can drive better financial performance and develop tools and case studies. These are some of the strategies we looked at, again, focused on decarbonization, energy management, building design and maintenance, sustainable sourcing, food service optimization, low emissions clinical care, waste reduction, responsible investments, and reduced transportation. We found that there's some critical enablers for a shift in healthcare to decarbonize. You need goals, you need a team focused on it, you need an inventory. I mean, this is basic for any industry. You need financing, right? And in fact, there are opportunities for financing. And most important and toughest, and this is all about change management, as you all know, you need the internal teams to really train and educate so that anesthesiologist knows what the choices are related to his or her anesthesia. So quick summary of some of the great findings of the team. Working with Gunnarsson Health System, we were looking at energy retrofits, designing buildings to be net zero, which would yield about $2 per square foot in annual benefits, potential to reduce emissions by 72%. So not a huge financial benefit, but enough of a financial benefit that it really makes sense to make the investment. Sustainable sourcing around reprocessing. As you know, in healthcare, we have a lot of single-use devices. Switching these single-use devices with reprocessed devices could yield significant $3.5 million in annual benefits for this one company at an average annual cost of about $87,000 to run it. And this was with Advocate Healthcare. And then finally with Cardinal Health, we were looking at transportation related to their decarbonization strategy. And reducing the number of last mile pharmaceutical deliveries can yield about $250,000 in annual savings for one of their supply chain partners. So again, some of these numbers are bigger, some of them are smaller, but if it's gonna get you at least a little bit of a bump and it's gonna reduce your emissions and improve your resiliency, you wanna be doing it. We are now embarking on an initiative with PwC to look at ROSI in energy, the energy sector and the hard-to-abate sectors. And this is going to be a challenge. Just telling you we're beginning this. We're going to be looking for partners, corporates who want to do case studies with us. We're going to be looking across the electrical energy value chain. We'll, and look at sort of what are the different practices there, and again, how do we monetize them, how do we learn about them from a financial perspective, from a planning perspective. We're also going to look at the oil and gas value chain, and as you can see from these complex models, like where are the leverage points, what are the different practices here, what will drive financial value, and again, begin to look at how do you understand these different approaches of reducing use of energy, reusing it, removing it, right? And look across the entire value chain. So stay tuned, and if you're interested in this work, please reach out to Chisra. In addition, I want to thank Valutis and Daniel Aronson, who are working with us to create an open source tool, the VCO2 tool that will be on our website, that will help companies understand at a high level what kind of strategies will help them decarbonize and save money. So that will help sort of point you in the right direction so that where you can go do more work. This is not yet up yet, but it will be by the next 6 months or so. All right, responsible investing with private equity. As you know, sorry, this is always like a whirlwind, and I run you through so much stuff just to exhaust you so that you are in a really good mood for the rest of the day. So responsible investing with private equity. So private equity to me is a fascinating asset class because private equity at its best is about improving the operational excellence of a company and investing in its future so that it'll perform well so that they can make more money at exit. At its worst, it's about stripping value from the company, loading it up with debt, letting it totter around until it dies. On the positive side, right, PE has this unique and really incredible opportunity to make change. And so we're really excited to be working on this initiative with a variety of different groups, Invest Industrial, ADL, BSR, et cetera. So as you look at what the private equity groups are doing, right, the traditional, or sort of the average way of approaching this is during due diligence, you look at red flags in ESG. During the holding period, you identify what the material issues are, and you pick a couple of ESG reporting metrics and call it a day. By the way, it's not just PE that does that. There are certainly plenty of corporates who are just doing that as well. What we want to do is help PE understand what are the material issues, practices, and value drivers for those issues. So in a given industry or a given company, they can prioritize investment based on the very explicit upside or downside management and level of effort investment involved. And help them also put in place better tracking. So this is one of we talked about this last year, but as we see this massive focus on ESG reporting coming out from CSRD, potentially SEC, California, we hear over and over again companies are looking at their money on sustainability as a net sum, right? And so if you're going to do more in reporting, then you do less in strategy and execution, less in R&D around sustainability. That is a problem because then you're spending all this money on ESG reporting, which basically are process-based metrics that don't drive better performance, right? And so if you're going to have to, and you have to, spend all that money on reporting, let's get some value out of it, right? And let's understand how to develop sustainability KPIs that actually focus on impact and ROSI KPIs, return on sustainability investment KPIs, that help you understand where the value creation is so that you improve your decision making and invest where you need to. And this is true not just for PE, this is true for everybody. So end of little mini lecture there. Okay. So how have we been thinking about this for PE? And frankly, this works for corporates of any type, right? Once you've identified what your target is, a company, right? What are the material issues for that company? And you can look to start, it's not perfect, but you can start with SASB. And we've put together a whole database of what are the key strategies for all those material issues, and what are the key practices associated with each of those strategies, and what are the key value drivers. So just looking here, energy management, one particular strategy is to improve energy efficiency and use of renewables. Some practices are to adopt products, services, and processes that use less energy, convert energy purchase to or generation to renewables where possible. What are the value drivers? You see a bunch of operational efficiencies, right? Also reduced risk, less exposure to volatility of pricing, reduced regulatory fines, et cetera. These are just illustrative, there's more. Once you have that, then we help you analyze how the company's performing against these topics in terms of their targets, their innovation and growth, their risk, et cetera. And then let's say you go ahead and buy the company. We give you then a lot more robust analysis of how you can then prioritize your strategies, your sustainability strategies with those companies. And again, this is for PE's portfolio companies, but this is actually relevant for all types of corporations. So here we see, we look at the sort of upsides and downsides, market risk, regulatory risk, physical risk, and geopolitical risk. And the upside, we look at revenue growth potential, operational efficiency, and reputation, and multiple impacts. Again, this is obvious. This is what you do in all of your business work. But normally, you don't do this or use this framework and apply it against sustainability. I have to, virtually every single company I talk to has not done this kind of analysis, even though you do it for everything else, right? So then let's say the PE firm buys the corporate. We help them identify what those key issues are. They prioritize them, and then we help them identify what some useful sustainability KPIs and ROSI KPIs would be. Then they can map them to the ESG reporting metrics that they have to report on. But this gives you the way to create value from all that investment in ESG reporting. And I wanted to show you an example. Fulcrum Consulting Group worked on this with a particular client, a commercial buildings products manufacturer. So just to show you how they used it. So they took their client through the first stage and the second stage to understand what kind of financial benefit could be driven through sustainability programs. You get generated a heat map. All this stuff auto-populates for you, right, in the tool. This is all on our website. And it showed here where the kind of downside and upside benefits for them, looking at product design and lifecycle management, et cetera. And then it laid out, it also populates a tool for you to tell you where is there a high upside, a high downside, low downside, high upside, et cetera. And they identified here both high downside and high upside, employee health and safety, and product design and lifecycle management as key areas to focus on. So for example, this target company had a superior energy efficiency performance, but nobody knew about it. They weren't promoting it, right? It was undervalued as a company, and it was undervalued within the company because they weren't focusing on this. So they realized that by training their employees and working on this better, their clients of the company actually were really excited to be able to purchase these products. And in employee health and safety, they had workplace injury rates that previously had been good, then started to really drop. And what had happened is during the pandemic, they stopped doing the trainings. They didn't bring them back up again. So again, this pointed to how there was an area to create better financial value, because obviously your people getting hurt affects you from a productivity, an insurance perspective, a reputation perspective, et cetera. So again, the tool helped identify where you could focus in and improve your strategy to drive better financial performance. So we're moving forward with BSR, who you'll hear from later. They're working with 5 PE firms pro bono to test this, and ADL and Fulcrum are also doing this. So if any of you are interested, please let me know. BSR already has all their 5 firms, but ADL and Fulcrum are looking for additional partners. Okay, so now we're turning to work that we've been doing called Invest NYC Sustainable Development Goals, which is about creating private-public partnerships to create a more sustainable, equitable New York City. We're here in New York. Our students, our staff, everybody love the city. We want to be part of making it a better place. By the way, I'm a native New Yorker. How many are native New Yorkers here? Woo, good, good, love that. Okay, so working with all these different partners, Mariana Koval and her team have been leading work on food and health, sustainable mobility, addressing the built environment, waste, renewable energy, and climate resilience. Don't worry, I'm not gonna go through all those. So we've got, oops, theory. Not working. Does this do it? No. Yeah. So in New York City, as I mentioned last year, we have this New York City Climate Mobilization Act. There's significant fines associated with your carbon emissions. We've developed a tool which we've improved since last year. It's now really fit for purpose, that will help you understand for every single building under the Climate Mobilization Act requirements in New York City, who holds the mortgage, what the fines are, what their current energy performance is, et cetera. So a real way to drive better performance. As an example, one major national bank with significant buildings that are subject to this local law, 1,200 buildings associated that contributing enormous amount of carbon emissions. They're going to start their portfolio fines in aggregate per year are going to be starting in 2030 at close to $11 million, right? So hopefully that company is paying attention to this in terms of their management. So we are now working with our partner here, Sam Chandon, at the Real Estate Center at Stern on working with mortgage lenders around how they can actually contribute to decarbonization, both through loans that will help with energy retrofits and working with their properties. And then we also, just to give you a little quick update on another area of work, is around food finance. And so here we're looking at lack of access to healthy and nutritious and sustainable food, been working at the state level as well as the city level. And what we see is that there's not a lot of financing going into this space. So we're beginning to pull together key stakeholders to talk about what sort of leveraging and designing a way to inject more capital into this area would look like. So we'd be delighted to have all of you participate as well. And then I'm going to wind up with just sharing a few resources that are available to you and then open up to questions. So, well, this is actually not a resource yet, but one of our researchers, Ulrich Atz, worked and led the work that we did on assessing the correlation between ESG and financial performance. We did a study, a meta-analysis, looking at more than 1,000 academic studies published between 2015 and 2020. And what we found in that study is that there was 60% of the studies found a positive correlation between corporate performance and sustainability, and then I think it was only about 14% found a negative correlation. We're going to be doing a new update where we're going to experiment with, or Ulrich is, because I don't understand this stuff, experiment with AI to actually scan all of the studies out there. We'll see if it hallucinates. Hopefully it hallucinates in a pro-environmental sustainability way. We shall see. But we're going to sort of find out if we can then do in a more efficient way an analysis of the last 5 years of studies. We also will be introducing a ROSI employee well-being monetization tool that we partner with LTI Mindtree, who kindly did pro bono work to prepare this tool. This, again, is an open source tool for anybody to go in and understand how you can monetize returns on your employee engagements. We also have a ROSI research database. So this database is all the studies that we can find, and if you look at it and see some missing, please let us know, on that correlation between ESG or sustainability and financial performance in every single area, from employees to productivity to energy efficiency to reputational risk, et cetera. Everything that we could find is in there. So it's a good place for ammunition if your leadership or somebody else is telling you, like, why are we doing this? There's no business case. There's a lot of good work there. We also have an asynchronous course on how to embed sustainability core to business strategy and to drive competitive advantage. This course is open source and free. Probably most of you don't need it, but you may have colleagues who do. And it's a quick and easy way to get involved and understand this whole question around embedding sustainability. I also should stress that this was kindly funded by Arca Continental, and so we're excited to be launching that. That'll be coming out very soon, too. And then some recent publications. I mentioned the insurance sector before. Gore Mutual up in Canada, fascinating company. They're really focusing on building resilience, helping their customers. I mean, helping their customers build back better, but build back better in a way that they'll be more resilient so that Gore Mutual doesn't have to keep bailing them out, right? So what kinds of technologies and work will help you do that? And a whole series of other publications around job metrics, around effective communications, which you'll hear more about through Edelman and so on. So we thank you all. I mean, everybody here, you're all doing really good work. Many of you are working closely with us. It's a real pleasure to learn from all of you, to hopefully provide the tools and research that you need. One of my frustrations when I was running Rainforest Alliance in my prior life was to reach out to academics and say, hey, you could be doing research on X. It'd be so useful to me. And they basically said, well, that sounds interesting, but I got to publish in this academic journal, doesn't really care about that. So, for me, like, how can we really design and work with you to create those tools and research that you can't do because you're busy doing your jobs, that we at academia can work on together? So with that, I want to open it up to questions. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Martin Vandersman. I was for a couple of days in Paris, France last year. I'm born and raised not in New York, but in Northwestern Europe. And I hadn't been there in 15 years. And it was a big surprise and shock to me how the city has changed. I grew up going to Paris a couple times a year, and I always loved it, and I always was a little bit afraid of all the aggressive automobiles and everything. Now it's a biking city. I grew up in a biking country, and I've never known Paris to be a biking city. So can we send Mayor, what's his name, Adams, to do an internship there?
Well, actually, I can say under Mayor Bloomberg and his Department of Transportation Commissioner, she put in place all of the bike lanes that we have in this city today. We did not have them prior, and they're continuing to build them. So we actually have a much better biking situation than we had before. But yes, still plenty of work to do. Yes, Paula, or sorry, Oh, sorry.
Hi, Tensie. Quick question. In one of your earlier slides, you were talking about governance, etc. And you said it's very important to have a sustainability committee at the boards.
Yes.
Can you elaborate why it's so important rather than integrating it in risk and audit or part of the main board conversation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Serge. And I just want to thank Serge and Invest Industrial for all the work they do with us. So first of all, I believe all the committees need to integrate sustainability. So audit and risk needs to be focused on the reporting, needs to be focused on what the risks are. Nominating needs to be looking at the board in terms of the ESG credentials, the training the board needs. Comp needs to be looking at how you incorporate ESG or sustainability into your comp metrics. So absolutely, it needs to be integrated. But if you do not have a committee that's focused directly and exclusively on sustainability, what you will end up having on the board is a focus on reporting, not on strategy and value creation. And that's why you need an additional committee to focus on that, because I can tell you, having sat on boards myself, there's many things that they're all doing in those half days, and if it isn't there, they're not going to focus on it in that way. And that, to me, is then the huge lost opportunity, because the boards, honestly, they need to be making sure that there's good protocols and requirements in place to ensure that they don't run afoul of the law, and that they are reporting transparently and correctly. But the board should be focusing on strategy, right, and business value. Yes, in the back, and then Paula down here. I had called.
Morning, Tensie. Great program as always, and you've really brought this far along. Can you sort of connect the dots as far as other universities, Stanford, Yale, Texas? Are you seeing a continued growth there also, besides the heartbread of New York City and the financial center, which we're all behind? So thanks again for your work.
Well, being a New Yorker, I'm going to say that we are the best. But yes, there is actually a growing movement around the world. There is an organization called Network for Business Sustainability, which is a network of all the sustainable business centers in business schools around the world, including dozens, if not 100, here in the US and then globally. And every month, there's new ones that are announced. So I think there's really good work being done at most of the major universities, because they recognize that these issues are material to their students understanding how to do good management in the businesses they're going into. Thank you. Paula.
Thanks, Tensie. I guess it's a corollary to Serge's question. How do you define ESG credentials for a board member?
Yeah, so when we did the research, it was a little challenging. We were trying to find relevant ESG credentials. So, like, for example, a number of board members sit on Boys and Girls Club of America. That's great. Really glad they're doing it. Not particularly tied to the business, right? So we were trying to find which credentials the board members had that were tied to the business. We also looked at them exclusively on their 10Ks and on their corporate website, because if it wasn't there, we figured they didn't think it was important. So there may well be board members with credentials, but they're not talking about them, so they don't count as far as we're concerned. Looking at things like governance and accounting, we weren't looking for someone who was just like, you know, an accountant. We were looking for someone who had worked at an accounting, or had been on the board of or engaged with an accounting oversight organization, for example, right? That type of thing. And the methodology, sorry, yes, here in the middle.
Hey, hi, Tensie. Thank you so much for showing us how all the different sectors are doing work with sustainability right now. You briefly mentioned that, you know, AI people who are looking for AI transformation should also consider sustainability. I'm kind of curious on what kind of trends that you're seeing in that area. Like, are there any synergies that you're seeing with people doing more AI transformation and new industries, and the sustainability credentials there?
Yeah, thank you. Well, so I guess two things. I was referring to that and saying, we know that companies right now are panicking about being behind in AI, and they are investing significantly to understand the landscape, to figure out and build competency in their companies and figure out how that's going to help them grow business value. Currently, most companies are approaching sustainability as a reporting and compliance issue, not as a strategic issue in the way they're thinking about AI. So just want to clarify my point there. And also, AI can absolutely be an interesting component of your sustainability strategy, right? Because it can help you with information management, with engaging with the wide range of data you're going to start to collect around environmental and social metrics that currently may be there, but nobody knows what that means. Nobody's looking at it, nobody's aggregating it, and it's in many different places. So I do think that AI can play a useful role, and I'm sure in a lot more innovative ways than that, to help companies with their sustainability agenda, beyond the other ways in which you'll be using AI. Yes?
Hi, Tensie, thank you. Great session. Can you talk a little bit more about the educational opportunities for board members, specifically in sustainability, and industry-specific resources that various boards could turn to? Are you aware of any of those?
So there are board training programs at NACD, which is the National Association of Corporate Directors here. There's also competent boards that Hele Sorensen runs. That is focused on ESG exclusively. There are also academic institutions that are offering board training. Series is working with a university on the West Coast. I'm really not trying to pretend I don't know the name. I just really don't remember, to provide training in ESG credentials. I also do executive ed that it isn't focused specifically on the board, but have board members come and take those courses. And I'm also looking at developing an asynchronous board sustainability course in the future. I have not seen industry-specific board training, to say. Yeah.
Hi there, Helen Sahi. So, you know me, Tensie, I have to put a little bit of fly in the ointment here. So, we talk about educating our board on ESG, you know, assuming they don't have any experience in it. If I want to be on a board and I want to be the accountant, the auditor, I don't have any experience in that. Can I be on the board and just get some audit training and be considered an expert in it?
Oh, I love this. Challenge. Yeah. Woo! So no. No. But what I am hoping, and what we've seen in these board credentials, is you actually have some of those folks coming from being a CSO, being running an energy startup, a renewable energy startup, you know, experience on the board of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, right? So you do see folks who do have very explicit background, years of work in that. Will an ESG credential training make you an instant expert? Absolutely not. What I hope is that it will give you more of an ability to know that you need to learn more and to ask the questions. boards aren't experts in most of the things that that the company puts in front of them. And they're not supposed to, I mean, they can't be. But they do need to learn to understand what's most material for the company just on regular business topics to be asking the right questions. It's the same for sustainability.
Hi there, Andrew Jolly, upcoming graduate from the MBA program. I'm just curious around the private equity and the investment framework. You know, you've got research from Yale, Kelly Shue, saying that, you know, investment into already low emission companies has less of an impact on emissions. Do you see these frameworks encouraging companies to invest in companies that have a higher potential for emission reduction, rather than just looking for companies that are already performing well in that space?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting opportunity for PE in in particular, because they are looking for what is that value creation opportunity. So if you look at Blackstone, KKR, Carlyle, they all have robust investments in climate and energy efficiency because it saves money. Those are for companies that are conventional companies. These are not companies whose mission it is to do low energy, right? So it's a cost saving, significant, and that's why they are investing in that. So I do think that there's plenty of opportunity to improve performance. I'll just give you one quick example, and then I think we're at time. But what all corporations don't quite get yet today, all corporations that produce anything physical, I should say, is that the commodities and the environment upon which they base their sourcing is going through radical disruptive change. That is going to drive enormous volatility and access to all of those natural resources that you've become accustomed to paying very low prices for, right? And so as we look at how companies need to transform themselves to improve that business case, and look at these questions like energy efficiency. So let me just, we looked at one pharmaceutical company. They were looking at a loss of exclusivity around a particular product, which generally in the industry means you lose about 60% of your income because the generics come in with a lower price product. So they decided to convert to a green chemistry approach. I told you before how well green chemistry is doing, right? In that green chemistry approach, they now reduced waste, chemicals, energy, and water use by 80% pretty much across the board. That then drove about $1.5 million of benefit per 100 metric tons of product. When you look at the breakdown of that costing out, of the embedded carbon, water, waste, et cetera, half of that, $760,000 was from water cost. Only 200 or so thousand was from carbon fees. This was back when carbon fees were $5 a metric ton in just a few jurisdictions. Carbon fees in the UK are 25. In Scandinavia, Sweden, I think it's 137. So that $250,000 just in the UK is now over $1 million for that one product, 100 metric tons of that product. Companies do not understand what is coming, right? How they're going to be hit with really extensive cost in their manufacturing in that particular example, but it's true for agriculture and a variety of other things. And so that's where helping companies do the analysis to understand where those embedded costs are, where basic operational efficiencies and innovation will drive a more effective, more cost-effective company that is less subject to volatility as well as reputational, regulatory, and all the other risks, and create products, like I mentioned in green chemistry, that you can actually sell at a premium. And by the way, last point, this company, instead of losing 60% of the value of the product, only lost about 30-something%. So that was actually $450 million of benefit for them. Now that's correlation, not causality, but they feel that it was relevant. So I'm going to end there and say, we've got a lot of work to do. So thank you.